Hello, everybody. Welcome to Learning Together, a live webinar series as part of the Lifelong Learning Program presented by Trinity University's Office of Alumni Relations. I'm Mike Bacon, class of 1989, and I am really honored to serve as the Vice President for Alumni Relations and Development. I'm thrilled to be able to engage with all of you tonight around this conversation with such a great panel on this important topic of the culture of philanthropy. So the first thing I get to do is introduce our panelists, and I'd like to start with Mike Moyer. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order. Mike is a member of the class 2000. He graduated with a double major in business management and political science. When Mike was here as a student, he sang in the choir for 4 years. He was a member of the student government, and he also served as a student ambassador. He now, through his career, has held many roles in fundraising, but he is the Associate Vice President of Principal Gifts at Cornell University. So welcome, Mike. We're really glad you're here. Next is Jessica Thorne, class of 1991. She and I were classmates, actually. She was a major in economics. Jessica is a member of the Trinity University Board of Trustees. She is an attorney and a managing partner with Estes, Thorne & Carr, which is a law firm up in Dallas. She has a diverse trial practice that focuses on law and business litigation. She has been, in her role on the board, very interested in alumni giving. She and I were talking, and she reminded me that she was a tour guide when she was here at Trinity, working with the Office of Admissions, and I know that she was also a Sigma. She's very proud of her sorority. And finally, I'm pleased to introduce Iska Wire, class of 1997. There's Iska. She majored in English with a minor in geology and environmental studies. While she was here at Trinity, she told me that she was a tiger dancer, which supported the athletic teams. She also did some work study in the library, which is where we're located today, Iska, and geosciences. She also was a tour guide, so maybe there's a common thread here. But Iska is the Chief of Staff for the Development Division of MD Anderson Cancer Center, and before that role, she held a very similar role in talent identification at Rice University. So we're so pleased to have all three of you here with us tonight. So tonight, through this discussion, I'm hoping that we're going to maybe talk about some of the myths surrounding alumni giving, maybe dispel some of those myths, and share some data about giving and growth in alumni giving that can help Trinity as we are in this march towards national recognition. You'll hear us talk about it tonight, but many of you, our alumni, are aware that Trinity has sought reclassification in the Carnegie classification system. So we will move from being a master's granting organization in the West to the national liberal arts category. Big step for us, one long in the making, but one in which we have been intentionally heading towards for a couple years. So I thought I would start by laying the foundation for our discussion, and I'd like to show our audience a few slides. Our panelists have seen these before, so I'll just kind of briefly show them. But why don't we pull up that first slide? These slides are going to help us kind of peel away some of the history and the knowledge about Trinity's alumni giving. So here, we can maybe put that in presentation. There we go. Thank you, Al. So this just gives you a sense that we have about 34,000 alumni on record at Trinity. It makes us much smaller than a place like Cornell. But Trinity's group has really been, we have 27,000 of those roughly are undergraduate alumni, meaning they went all 4 years here to Trinity. We had a graduate program, we had like 15 graduate programs in the 70s and 80s, and then we have 5 graduate programs right now, but we have almost 4,000 undergraduate alumni. And then we've got about 3,000 alumni who attended Trinity but didn't graduate, but we still claim them as alumni. This is important because when we talk about Trinity's rate of alumni giving, we're really focused on just the undergraduate number. All colleges, when they're computing their alumni giving, focus on the undergraduate alumni to kind of maintain apples-to-apples comparisons. So the next slide is what I call 42 years of history. This slide shows you from about 1980 to today, alumni giving at Trinity based on the percentage. So the first part of that graph there on the far left, it was the early years. Trinity, I say early years in the fact that we were just creating a development office. kind of the systems that we have in place now with staff in place. Trinity in the 80s was really getting that started. Then in the mid-80s into the 90s, Trinity really shifted to a 3-year residency. For any of our alumni that were here in those 70s, they'll recall that a lot of students at Trinity lived at home and attended classes, and they were called townies. And then a smaller group lived on campus. But starting by about the time President Calgard came to Trinity, we shifted to a 3-year residency requirement, and we sort of leveled out at around 20%, in and around the 20% range in terms of alumni participation. The next category is about I think that's maybe 2000, the year 2000. We had a jump of about 3%. One of our trustees made an anonymous $1 million challenge spread over 3 years to really encourage alumni to give. So alumni participated at a higher level then, but the thing about a lot of challenges is unless they're sustained year after year, they sometimes just have a short-term gain. It's what we saw here, because immediately after that alumni challenge, you start seeing our alumni participation rate go down again. Then you see a steep decline. Those were the years of what really the whole nation was dealing with the Great Recession, culminating kind of 2008, 2009. We saw a decrease in the number of alumni giving. And then you come to today. This is kind of this period right here, and I'm not sure what that box says. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was translating for me. I couldn't read it. All across the country, you're going to see that private schools are having a decrease in alumni participation. One of the interesting things I'm going to show you is that we're actually gaining momentum with our alumni giving, but across the country, we've been seeing decreases. I show this slide, and actually, in all honesty, I've been showing it to our Board of Trustees because I want them to understand that even as we focus on the importance of alumni giving, and we compare ourselves with some really amazing liberal arts colleges around the country, the challenge we faced is one that is not of a recent making. Trinity has always struggled with alumni percentage of participation. Some of the schools I'm going to talk about next have much higher alumni participation rates, but as you look at our 42 years of history, you'll see that Trinity has kind of been in a range and stayed in that range for a long time. A lot of times people ask me, how do we compare with other schools? And so I'm going to show you 2 charts. This one is what we call our peers. And it's a group of schools that as we think about being on the national stage, we see ourselves and we look at our statistics, the size of our class, the number of people who graduate, the endowment size, the staff size. We're pretty comparable to some of these schools. They're Bucknell, Denison, Colorado College, Furman, Lafayette, McAllister, Occidental, Rhodes, and Skidmore are all in this subgroup that we're comparing ourselves to. What you see in the blue columns are their average giving. This is kind of a historical perspective for about 5 years, and you can see that across the board, that subset of peers are actually seeing a decrease in their alumni giving year after year. It matches the trend that we're seeing nationally with alumni giving becoming less and less popular. You'll see on the other hand, at Trinity, we're actually inching up. Now, granted, we have a long ways to go, but I'm proud of the fact that some of the decisions and the systems we've put in place are actually seeing alumni giving slowly increase, even as we're seeing some of our peers decrease. The next slide is what I call our aspirants. And these are colleges that are a bit ahead of us, I would say. Many of them have 100 years on us in terms of how long they've been around. A lot of them tend to be East Coast schools. Bates College, Colgate, Colby, Claremont McKenna out in California, Davidson, Grinnell, University of Richmond, Washington, and Lee. They have more of what I would call a culture of philanthropy. So you can see even these schools are seeing some dips. 34% up to 38, then starting to go down, 35, 30, 33. Of course, year 2020 was a unique year for all of us because of COVID. But again, starting to see some slight decreases as Trinity starts to build momentum as an increase. I wanted you to see these schools because oftentimes when I talk to members of our board, these are the schools they have in mind. And then oftentimes they'll bring up amazing schools like Amherst and Williams and Princeton, all of which have probably alumni participation rates 50% or greater. And I remind them that those schools have been doing this work of reaching out to their alumni and talking about the importance of alumni giving for a lot longer than Trinity has. As you saw in that graph, the 80s were really the start for us in terms of a systematic development office. So I think that's all I need on the slides, and we can come back to everybody's faces. What I'd like to start with is our panelists, and let you have a chance to sort of talk about why do you give to Trinity, and what's the benefit in your mind of supporting Trinity? So Iska, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So I would say part of it is Trinity gave a lot to me. So I got a scholarship. I was a work study student. My parents couldn't really afford to send me to Trinity. My grandparents helped me. And so I know, fully aware, and now being an alum for a number of years and reading the information, knowing that so many of our students have that type of support. And so now being in the field, especially, and then being, fairly successful, having a good job and career, I feel like it's really important for me I'm a repayer, right? So someone helped me, so I'd like to help them for the future. But I think also what I've learned about working in higher ed, I've been at Rice University and the University of Houston, and now MD Anderson, knowing that the reputation that our university has for us alums is just as important now. It's even more important now that we're alums than it was even when we were going to school, right? This is the network that we're launched into. And the fact that I can say I went to Trinity, now I'm a Houston person in Texas, so it's very much well known. But when I say I went to Trinity, I get that immediate response of, oh my gosh, what a great school. And part of that is our responsibility to kind of keep supporting Trinity and keep that image up and keep giving back so that we can continue to have that next wonderful generation come through and have the same experience that we did.
Iska, I love the way you tied the value of your degree to the way you support your university. That's a theme I think we'll come back to. Mike, talk about what makes you feel passionate about supporting Trinity?
I think that there are a lot of schools in the country that are the scale of Trinity that are truly special in higher education. Small liberal arts universities allow students to really poke around the edges of curiosity. It's a pretty amazing opportunity. I've been involved in much larger kind of research universities in my career, and the further I go in that direction, the more I appreciate what Trinity gave to me. The world and some of these universities that you said, Mike, those are big places. Some of the aspirants are big places, and you got to find your way to a corner, and all of Trinity's a corner. And I think making that available to as many students that want to be there. My wife and I, Christina, who's class of 99, we believe deeply in first generation scholarships, and allowing people to have access to an education like Trinity, whether you're first generation or you're the fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh generation, is absolutely critical. And I've lived on the East Coast ever since coming to Trinity. Christina's a Texan, so I call myself an adopted Texan. But the more we support our college from an alumni engagement standpoint, from a philanthropic standpoint, so the stature of the institution gains, the more you feel it, and the more people know where we came from, and know where we came from is a great place. And supporting it through philanthropy and through engagement is absolutely crucial. Rankings and just talking to colleagues, that Trinity's a special place in the landscape of higher education. So that's a little bit about us.
Mike, thanks. That's great. Jessica, talk about your passion. And obviously that passion has led you to serve as a board member, but around giving, kind of what your thoughts are.
Sure. And I guess first, let me apologize if I look to Mike, because this is very unnatural for me, and I'm trying to look straight ahead. So here's what I would say. For those of you that have been around a long time and remember the phone-a-thon, where we probably all went and made phone calls from the Coates Center or something like that, and Mike was very instrumental in a lot of that. And we called people and we asked them to give, and when they said yes, we would get really excited and bells would ring and we'd get all kinds of accolades, right? That's a really special feeling. And I want to make sure that, as I was a student, right, and I was a student thinking how great it was that alumni were giving back to Trinity so that I could have that education. so now that I am an alumni, I think it's very important for me to give back to that institution. And as I've become more involved and a trustee, what I've learned is that Trinity is just as amazing now, in some ways maybe more amazing than when I was a student. And so now, as we work to change our trajectory or increase our visibility, it just says so much to say to the world that Trinity is just a great school and a place where a lot of people should, number one, know about, number two, attend, and number three, get their degree from. And I'm just so proud to get to be a part of that and to be a part of that culture and to hopefully work with all of you to improve that culture so that we look like the yellow bars, I guess, on the graph that Mike showed rather than our maroon bars.
Should have made those bars green. I love that you said joy, because in my career before coming back to Trinity, I was a consultant, and I spent a lot of time training volunteers to help them feel more comfortable about asking for money. And so one of the exercises I would have them do is I would say, think about a gift you've just made to any nonprofit. And then I'd say, how did you feel after you made that gift? And a lot of people would say, I feel good. I feel like I helped out. I feel like I did my part. And some people would actually say, I felt joyful. So I always tell people when we're asking others to support a cause, you're giving them a chance to feel joy. It's not just about, gosh, I have to twist your arm. I have to, there's a lot of language about that. Now I have to ask you for money. No, this is something that people get excited about because they want to help. So oftentimes, all four of us having gone to Trinity, we talk to our classmates about giving all the time. And sometimes we'll hear some reasons why they don't feel like they can support Trinity or they have what we sometimes call objections. I'm curious, one of the ones we sometimes hear is, doesn't Trinity have a really big endowment? Like, why does my gift even matter when Trinity has all that money in a bank account? So I'm curious, how would you guys answer that question?
Can I go?
Yeah, Jessica.
So I'll give you my brief answer on this. First of all, I would say that the endowment sustains us, but alumni giving is what makes us stronger as an institution, right? So one of the statistics that I have loved learning about is that even students who come to Trinity and fully pay for their own tuition, receive no aid whatsoever, the tuition only covers 65% of the cost for the education. So 35% of those education costs for each student to come to Trinity are covered by money that we give or the endowment or a combination. And so it's very important as alumni that we give to make sure that students continue to come to Trinity, right? We've got to make sure that we have all of that support so that every student, no matter whether they're full financial need or no financial need, gets the same quality education. And we can't do that without alumni giving. I have a lot of other reasons too, but we'll get there in a minute.
That's a great answer. Iska or Mike, what would you say?
Sure. First of all, I would ask them, are you saving for your own retirement? And do you plan to everything that we know how to do as a person is principle-based, and you use the proceeds. This is what Trinity is doing, right? And just because Trinity is a nonprofit, a university, doesn't mean that they somehow magically make a higher percent on their investments than we do as people. There's taxes and all the things. And so I think it's important to relate back to people's own experience and explain to them that that's basically Trinity's retirement, right? They're investing in that future so that they'll have generations in advance that will have that taken care of. I mean, think of COVID. If they didn't have an endowment, you would have laid off faculty and not been able to have all the students on campus and not had all the great resources. I mean, you would have had some shutdown situations, which I know a lot of organizations faced. And so a university that we want to sustain and stay around and be there for us for the future. I mean, you've seen some universities having issues looking at closure because they didn't have enough money. This is what safeguards our institution. So I usually bring it back to people individually so that they can truly understand what endowment is. It's not like a pile of money that we're sitting on, hanging out with, that we get to throw parties with. It's an investment with principal, and we just use the interest. And actually, most universities reinvest a small portion of that interest each year to continue to grow the endowment. So they're very, very smart with how they're taking care of it. The board votes. I mean, I guess I think it's 4.5% is what usually is typically the payout. So it's very conservative. So just making sure that people understand, part of it's fear of just lack of awareness. So just kind of spreading that joy from, as a fundraiser for like 20 years, that's just part of my language and something that I know all the time.
That's great, Iska. Thank you for that. Mike, you're up east. There are lots of really well-endowed schools up there. And are there alumni asking this question? Because they
Yes,
sure have great percentages.
everywhere asks this question, Mike. And what I like to say is endowment is the ultimate giving that you can do. Endowment is permanency. Endowment is you saying, I care about this thing and I'm going to support that in permanency. And what people don't realize is those dollars are really locked to what the donor wants to do. And that's fantastic. It builds this base, just like Iska was saying, that sustains a place for decades and decades and 150 years in Trinity's situation. But there's a really important journey to that ultimate gift. And it's through people giving their first $50 gift, $500, $5,000, $10,000 gift. And that's the edge of excellence. Like those gifts, even though they don't seem like a lot when they're just by themselves, when you place them together, it gives President Anderson, it gives every dean on campus the ability to do the stuff that you can only dream about. And it needs both the endowment and it needs this community of support, which is what Trinity's about, to allow us to catch the edge, to be the next best version of ourselves, like Jessica was saying in the beginning of the time.
Mike, I just want to add one thing.
Yeah, please.
A lot of those bigger universities with those larger endowments, they're actually proud of those dollars. And some of us smaller universities act ashamed. And I think it's time to flip that script entirely. We should be proud of the fact that we're doing a good job and safeguarding our university versus being embarrassed by the fact that we have an endowment of X number of dollars. It's actually it's a point of pride.
A really good point, Iska. And Mike, I loved your point about the collective nature of our giving. When I first came to Trinity, I think, which is only 7 years ago, but I think that people were feeling like my smaller gift won't make a difference. And yet when we pool all those smaller gifts together, it makes millions of dollars that we're able to get to students and help them access a Trinity education. So I love that you brought up the collective nature of all of that. Sometimes we'll run into, especially our younger alumni, that say, I'm still paying off student loans. Why should I give to Trinity? How would you guys respond to that? Iska, what do you think?
So I think the most important things for people to understand is that you have to start small. So part of it's participation, right? So I'm the chair of the kids. I have 2 kids and teenagers, and I'm the chair of the annual fund for the class. And it's the same thing. It's about a community coming together to support the institution. And it's not. I think some people feel like if I can't write a check for $5,000, well, not a lot of people can write a check for $5,000 or $500,000 or $5 million. But it's like Mike was saying, those small gifts coming together, that's what shows. So the reason why those rankings count all of these percentages of alumni giving is they're not asking for the total dollars from alumni, they're asking for your total dollars raised. They're asking for your percent because that shows how actively engaged your alum are in your institution, right? And so if everybody on this call went on and made a $5 contribution, that would start to move the needle, right? And so it's not about the zeros, but it's about showing that we care and that we're engaged and we're actually paying attention. And we didn't just graduate from Trinity and close the door and never look back, right? I've been back to Trinity multiple times, taking my kids on, tour. I stop by every time I'm there to buy a new t-shirt. So we're staying connected, and that's what those rankings start to evidence.
I love that. And Mike, please.
Yeah, I think something that you all have started, Mike, and is really important is the culture of giving when you're a student. The thing that you understand at Trinity, I believe, is you walk around, you understand there's gifts that made buildings possible. There's lectures that exist because somebody was generous. And to start with your student ambassadors, to start with senior class gift campaigns, you start to incubate a cohort of people who understand what it's about. And then, like Iska said, you find 3 more friends. And you incubate a small section of your class when you graduate. And I believe that, yes, you love your university, but you still might be upset about the B that you got in the class that you might have gotten an A in, that you think you should have gotten an A in. But at the end of the day, if I'm partnering with 3 of my really close friends and we're doing it together, It creates a culture it's a node of philanthropic culture of people that I care about. And we go forward in that, and we ask ourselves about it. I have a great friend who's on the alumni board who asks me about this every time I talk to him to make sure I'm giving my money, and I'm very happy to. So, but I think that's really important. I think in the younger years, it's about the collective nature of the bonds that you've made, whether you were in the Sigmas or whether you're in choir, whether you're a Tiger dancer, right? It's you're finding your little cohort of individuals and your friends that feel the same way you do, and it's small incremental gains on that. And that first $25 gift could turn into naming a business school at the end of the time, right, Mike?
Exactly. That's a really good point. Jessica, I know the idea of rankings is something that you've been really focused on. Talk a little bit about kind of this connection between our alumni giving. Iska implied that sometimes you see it as a vote of confidence in your university, but talk about that and what it means for Trinity.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, so as we transitioned to the National Liberal Arts List, or ranking, if you will, our alumni giving percentage, not how many dollars each person gives, but the number of people that give, makes a difference. So really, if you can only give that $5 gift or that $10 gift, or you're still paying off those student loans, what you're effectively doing, if you can make those gifts, is you're making the value of your education, you're improving or increasing the value of your own education, because the Trinity brand is going to increase if we can increase our alumni percentage. And what I will tell you is that as we move to this national ranking list, right, we as alumni actually have the power to make a difference in where we land on that ranking, because alumni giving is one of the metrics that is looked at when they rank the national liberal arts institutions. So if we can raise our percentage of alumni giving and get to that 20%, 25%, hopefully 30%, maybe even 50%, we're going to improve our ranking. And as alumni, what a powerful thing for us to be able to help Trinity in that way with even $5 or $50 or 25 million, I guess, whatever it is,
yeah,
right?
I recall a buddy of mine told me that one strategy they used at his college was, they said, think of your class year, whatever it is, and then you decide where you want to put a decimal point. Do you want to give $20? Do you want to give $200? Do you want to give $2,002? It's up to you to figure out the decimal point, and I always thought that was a creative way to think of it. I want to capture something you said about sort of the value of the degree and the brand. Mike, when we were talking a couple days ago, you said something really powerful. I think it was you. I think you were talking about how your university is part of your identity as a person. I'm trying to recall, was that you who shared that thought? Because I thought it was a really powerful thought.
I think so. It sounds like something I'd say. Yeah, and from being further away from San Antonio, the brand of Trinity matters to me. I think in a little bit of a different manner than if you're in the state of Texas, where Trinity is just a completely known entity. What Jessica did, what the board did, what President Anderson did, of saying we're going to become a national liberal arts university, that is gutsy, and I applaud every single person that was part of that, because we are that good. And the brand of who I am in the world, in higher education specifically, when they say where you go to school, it matters to me that they know where I came from. It matters to me that they know Trinity's good. I'll show them it's good because I'll work with them and hopefully get them to respect Trinity, and hopefully some graduates to take some jobs. But the brand of the university is part of who we are in our lives. It's not us, but Trinity helped every single one of us become whoever we are today. Some people more, some people less, but nobody that went to that school is the same person that showed up on the first day to go to their door. They're different.
Right. I have forgotten, I'm supposed to remind folks, if you have questions for us, please type it in the chat. We would love to answer your questions. But I wanted to echo, Mike, what you just said. When Dr. Anderson, our president, first got to Trinity, we took him on a listening tour to 22 alumni chapters around the country. And one of the things he heard repeated over and over again was that people wanted better recognition of Trinity. They said, I don't want to tell people I didn't go to a Bible school. I don't want to tell people that my school is not in Hartford, Connecticut. So he heard loud and clear from the day he started as president that our alumni are yearning for people to understand the value of this college. And as Dr. Anderson says so well, he's like, I don't like being a hidden gem. There is no value in being a hidden gem. And so part of this march towards being in the national liberal arts category is really raising our on everyone's radar. Any other thoughts as you think about Trinity? If you were to talk to a friend who maybe isn't giving to Trinity, listen, there are lots of great nonprofit causes that they can support. There's some in their hometowns. Maybe they believe in food service for those who need food. Maybe they're more excited about animals and taking care of dogs and cats. There are such good reasons to support. Why would you ask alumni to put Trinity in their top 5, maybe, of gifts they make? Iska, what do you think?
So having been a frontline fundraiser for a long time, I dealt with this a lot with folks who, maybe were more passionate about, say, for instance, a cause that was relevant right now. I know during COVID, people were interested in homelessness and, direct services and social services and things like that. So for me, I think if I were to look back over my life and consider the few entities that were major players, I don't imagine how you can say that your university isn't one of those. So, quickly for me, it's the Girl Scouts, it's Trinity. Those are the two that are top, because I spent a long time at both those places and they were foundational for me. And so I think I would ask someone, what is it about Trinity that you remember? What was it that made a difference for you, right? So for some of us, it was late nights at the library. For some of us, it was the connection that I had working in the geology department as an undergrad. And so I typically give my gifts back there. So I would say, start with a gift to one of those entities, see how it goes. For instance, the chair of the geosciences department often writes me a note and thanks me when I give my gift. And the library has sent me a note. A sweet little English major also sent me a note when I gave a gift. So I would say, give it a whirl and start to engage. Start with a starter gift and start to see what's happening in the area that was interesting to you. But I think a lot of people haven't thought about their overarching philanthropy. So I think many of us who maybe have could question a little bit and say, what is it about your life that you can look back on at this point, and where are the pieces that move the needle for you, right? What are the top 5? And I think that it's pretty easy to see, honestly, a place where you lived 3 years or maybe 4, that kind of took you in. And as Mike said, you found your corner in any of the corners on campus. There's bound to be something that is a spark. Everyone's got a story. When I worked at the library, everyone has a library story, and I think everyone has a Trinity story. And I think it's part of our responsibility to kind of help them figure out what their Trinity story is.
Love that. I took some really good naps in that library. Jessica, what about you? What would you say to somebody in terms of why put Trinity in their top 5?
I think Iska said it very, very well, right? We all went, as alumni, we went to Trinity, so we all had some experience. Some experience might not have been great. Some experience might have been phenomenal. We might have, made our best friends, had a professor that really inspired us, gotten to study abroad, or gotten something out of the university that changed our lives in some way, small, big, whatever. And so when you give to a cause, it's really nice to give to something that did something for you, right? So when we talk about all the causes that we could give to, like I think you mentioned homelessness and animal shelters, those are all really meaningful, but they're not something that's a part of you. We're a part of Trinity, and if we can help make Trinity a better place, why not give some money to it? And it can be little, it can be big, it can be incremental, but let's let other people have those experiences, and we can give the money back for those experiences that we had, kind of a memory sort of thing.
I'd like to talk about future students in a minute, but one of the things Iska said really resonated with me is the idea of designating your gift. My chief financial officer at Trinity loves unrestricted gifts because that gives us the latitude to put it where Trinity needs it the most. But increasingly around the country, people, as they make gifts to nonprofits, are increasingly designating their gift to something very specific. So it can certainly be scholarships and financial aid, but we see a lot of excitement from alumni around academic departments, around a sports team they played for, around an organization they served in when they were here as a student, even around if they were in a Greek organization, being able to provide scholarships to students who are in that organization. So that idea of sort of giving to something that touched your life is really popular right now. And some of you have participated in our big giving day that we do in September. It's called the 1869 Challenge. It's 1,869 minutes of giving. And it's really fun to see some competition around the sports teams, as you can imagine, are the most competitive. So those coaches really rally their alumni who played those sports and encourage them to give, and it's been fun to watch all that excitement. But designating your gift is really mainstream right now.
And one thing, Mike, one thing, Mike, that I'd like to say, one thing that we have is the power of an alumnus and a friend. It's a conversation between friends, and something people don't talk a lot about is what they philanthropically support. It's not something that comes up a lot. And if this is a conversation you're with a friend that you trust and you feel like you can go there, say, hey, have you thought about philanthropy? How does Trinity fit into what you care about? If you start that conversation, of each of us that gives, whether we give $50, $500 or more, if we can have that conversation in an honest space with our friends, to me, that's where the magic happens and change happens, because you get to tell them why you support it. And sometimes that's more important than telling them why they should give. And it's a very personal conversation, and it's one that if you give and you have the trust with that person, I recommend anybody on this call that's listening or to try that. It's a powerful conversation between friends.
That's a great point. Mike, I'm curious, start us off on this. Why, when we think about giving, how does giving back help future students?
Well, it helps them either immediately through current use. So there's two ways to give money. You give into an endowment, which sets up a fund which is managed, and there you make money on that fund, and a portion of the money you make every year goes to supporting whatever that fund's for. That exists forever and it grows over time, just like our endowment has. And then there's current use dollars, where I give, so Christine and I give money every year for first generation scholarships that goes to Trinity, and Trinity expends it in that year or the coming year. And either way, the endowment is the ultimate gift. It exists forever. The thing I like to say is it's one of those things you can do that's permanent. Your family's permanent, and there's very little outside of your family that is truly permanent in this world that we can put out there. And giving and philanthropy and endowments is one of them. And it will impact generations of students going forward. And to have that experience of starting off with a current gift to support a student or a program like Iska does, it allows you to see what that impact is like right now.
Great. Iska, anything you'd add to that?
I think one of the most important things that our giving does, I know very few kids that go to Trinity, right? There's a kid a year or so from my kid's school that goes to Trinity, but I probably don't know many kids right now at Trinity, but I still give to Trinity, right? And so we are, as alum giving, starting to instill that culture of philanthropy that we're trying to create across all of the alums, right? And so those students are seeing that we're creating that legacy for them, and hopefully they'll see that they'll do that when they graduate as well, with the student gifts and all those different things. But it's that giving back and setting that example. Like I make sure my kids know that I give to Trinity, because I want them to know that that's what you do when you graduate from somewhere that gave a lot to you. My education costs way more than it cost for me to go there, right? I know that. We know that their tuition and all that jazz in the books and everything, and it's expensive, but I got so much more out of that than what it cost my family to attend Trinity, and it is still paying off. My first job that I got was because I was a Trinity grad, because a Trinity grad hired me. And he flat out said it was because I was a Gold Award Girl Scout and I was a Trinity grad, and that's why he called me. So it just never stops paying off. And the network that we continue to grow, it's part of what that legacy that we need to have.
You really nailed the culture of philanthropy. That's the whole topic here, is trying to create a culture on our campus and among our alumni that it's almost like that's what we do when we graduate. Increasingly, we have alumni hiring alumni. When they look for jobs, they come to our career services office. They'll ask for resumes of current students. So I love that tradition. A lot of people in Texas would tell you A&M is the king of that A&M, they'll always hire another Aggie. So I love that we're starting that. Our healthcare administration master's program, man, it's like the mafia. They run all the hospitals around the country and they hire other Trinity grads. So I love that you touched on that culture of philanthropy. Jessica, is there anything you'd add on that?
The only other thing I would like to say, and I honestly don't even know if it's responsive to the question, so I'll say that straight up. But, you know, Iska and Mike are the three people that know what they're talking about, that are professionals in this area of philanthropic giving and creating this culture. But what I would say is that when we talk about, you know, giving to Trinity and making it an important part of us, when I see the slides, Mike, that you put up, and I see the schools that have alumni giving percentages that are so much higher than Trinity's, my issue is that I think Trinity is as good a school as any of them. And I want people to know that, and that's really powerful to me. That, and there's work to be done because we need to build that culture that these other universities have, but I believe that it's worth doing because I believe that Trinity is truly as good as all of those other schools, and that this national ranking will help show that. And so whatever we can do to help build that culture, I'm here. I'm ready.
Love that. Thank you. And that's part of why you're here and part of why you're on the board. We have a question from the audience, those listeners, and I wanted to share it. It says, do you find that recent graduates relate more to their activities than to their class? And in all honesty, I wouldn't even limit that to recent grads. I think, and I'll be curious what the three of you think, but for a long time, I felt like people were less focused on their class, like I'm the class of 89, you're the class of 91. They were less focused on that, and they were more focused on an activity they were involved with. That's their connection, like you've stayed connected through your sorority. Mike, I don't know if you've been able to attend any, we've had a couple choir reunion gatherings. So people tend to find an affinity that they're connected to. But I honestly think that this feeling, what we're trying to get to is the connection to Trinity as your university, as opposed to just, oftentimes people are connected to their history department or economics department, kind of the classmates they had within their major. I'm curious, what do you guys think about that in terms of how people stay connected? Mike, what are your thoughts?
So I think it's a little bit of both. So sometimes you are connected to your friends and your classes, and you support Trinity because you love Trinity. Sometimes it's about this part of Trinity that really resonated with you. And when you look at philanthropy overall right now, regardless of whether you're 1 year out or you're 15 years out or you're 30 years out, people tend to give to what they're passionate about. Driving dollars into unrestricted accounts like your business officer once, Mike, is great. But at the end of the day, what I'm passionate about as a Trinity alumnus is an area of Trinity. And what we need to do is we need to be able to give people access to those areas. If Iska loves the Tiger dancers and wants to understand what's going on with them more directly, give us the option, Mike, to find out, and give us the ability to go deep into Trinity whenever we can. Because if we connect with what's elemental to who we are with Trinity, it's going to create gifts that might just not have happened before, or somebody's first gift, which is what this is all about, to create the culture.
I love that. Iska, what are your thoughts?
So I would say it doesn't matter, right? Your sorority, which is a Trinity sorority, wouldn't exist unless it was a Trinity. And I would say, you know, my dance group wouldn't exist if there wasn't Trinity. So, and I think the overarching university needs our support too. So I think however it is that you connect to the university, whether it's just on a broad basis from that overarching repaying space and just the fact that Trinity is amazing, or this really deep connection with the choir, or this, you know, like, is there a past tour guide association? I think Jessica and I need to know about it.
Clearly, right.
We can all walk backwards really well because of that. But I think however you come at your institution is completely fine, right? whether it's through one of your special interests or a department, etc. I think all of that contributes to the greater good. And I think that when we give back to any of those causes, and sometimes the institution highlights a particular cause every few years to kind of give a little spark to some of that. Like if the library is having something, like they're or one of the, some of the buildings are getting redone. So your department's in that building and it's going to be getting redone. So they kind of focus your effort and attention there. I think that's fine. I think people should be allowed to give where their passion is, right? Because their passion gift is going to be the gift that's going to be, it's going to have more zeros behind it. So personally, Trinity's in my estate plans because I believe that strongly in Trinity. It was really easy when I was writing it. I just put the caveat in there that X number of % of what's left over in my estate goes to Trinity. That's simple and easy. And so that's that ultimate gift, if you will, that Trinity gets to decide kind of how it goes. So I love that people can get engaged and involved and support, and you can support multiple, like you don't have to just pick one, right? So I could give a gift to multiple pieces across the institution, or I could give an institutional wide gift and let your CFO figure out where to spend it.
Well, and I will tell you, when I first came here to Trinity, we had a lot of our Greek organizations would encourage their alumni to give money to the Greek organization as a separate entity, and then they would turn around and make a wonderful scholarship to Trinity. And now every Greek organization has a scholarship account here at Trinity. So their alumni or alumni give to that fund, and then they give the same scholarship, but it's all done through Trinity. And I'm proud of that because we've really developed a lot of trust between Trinity and our Greek organizations that wasn't always there. And so I feel great that every Greek organization now has its own scholarship fund here. Another question from the audience, from my friend Linda K. Peterson. She asked, how does one know if our friends and classmates give to Trinity? If we wanted to encourage them to give, talking about money can be uncomfortable for some people. So I will tell you that a lot of institutions, Trinity included, for many years published what we call the donor honor roll, and it was a list of everybody who gave within their class. Sometimes it would show by what level they gave, and it was we would print it into a really nice magazine and send it out, and it was really expensive. I'm not joking, it was probably about $30,000 a year to compile it, print it out, and send it out. So then we shifted to showing that same sort of information online. We created an electronic honor roll. So we sent out a couple emails, told people where the link was, had them go look at it if they wanted to see where their giving was or see where their classmates were. We did that for a couple of years. And then somebody said, are we tracking how many people actually access that website? So we started doing that, and over a 3-year period, I think maybe 65 people went and looked at it. So again, it was a ton of work to put that all together. So we realized that probably was not the best return on our investment. So at this point, Linda Kay, we really haven't talked a lot about where people give or how much they give at Trinity. It's probably an opportunity there that I haven't quite figured out what's the right way to do it with the right level of investment. We are starting a process of creating class agents. Back in the 70s and 80s, Trinity had a class agent program, but it was not what I would call really systematically run. You'd get a letter from your class agent once a year that was really a letter written by Trinity that they maybe added a couple sentences at the beginning. So we're looking at starting class agents who are members of a class as the class graduates. So we'll pick 4 or 5 people within the class of 2022 who will serve as their first class agents. And their job is to keep their class engaged up to their 5th reunion, and then to really form the core of the reunion committee. So we'll start doing that more and more over time, but at this point we're starting it on the kind of the newest graduates rather than going back and recreating it, mainly if I'm honest, because there's some staffing that's important to do it right. So so it's a slow process, but Linda Kay, thank you for asking that question. I don't feel like I've got a great answer to it, but I think given that we're at 16% of alumni giving, perhaps it's safe to assume that you can start the conversation and they haven't made a gift. So I would love it if they say, oh, I already gave, then you're great, but you can probably go ahead and start that conversation safely. Mike and Iska,
I think Linda, I think the thing is, Linda, that is it's if you don't do this for a living, asking people about how much they give and asking them to make a gift. I get it. That's not a comfortable space for a lot of people. So the way that I've worked with a lot of friends and folks I've worked with in my professional life is tell them why you give. Tell a story about you and let that story start a conversation. And if you feel comfortable to ask a question about, have you ever thought about it? That's sometimes as far as you need to go. You know, and just say, I'd love for you to join me if you feel the same way about any part of Trinity. And leave it there, but always start with yourself in the space of why you do it and why you care and why you give, and you'll get to the right conversation. I think you don't have to ask for $100 or $1,000 when you're with the person. You just have to show them that you care, and when people see that you care, they tend to care. I've found. So
that's a great response, Mike. Thank you. We're coming close to the end of our time together. I've been keeping an eye out for questions. If there are any last questions that people have, we are very happy to take it. I think we got one coming. Al's sending it our way. The question is, do you have to make a gift every year? And is it based on a calendar year? And how do I make a gift? So those are some good questions right there. I'll tackle the calendar year, but then I want other people to feed in. So colleges have what's called their fiscal year, and it's not your calendar year. I mean, it's oftentimes confusing because we all do our taxes and our giving based upon within a calendar year. Trinity's calendar years, fiscal year, starts June 1 and ends on May 31st. So between now and the end of May really is our big push to try and get the last gifts in. And then come June 1, we start all over again. So that's why oftentimes you may get a letter in September and you're like, wait, I already gave in February. Why are they asking me again? It's because it's a new fiscal year. But I'm curious, Iska, Mike, and Jessica, why should I make a gift every year? Why does that matter? Jessica?
Well, what I've learned from you, Mike, in recent days is that in order for us to, and I keep going back to the alumni participation because that's where my heart is right now, but in order to keep the alumni participation number at our number and then grow it, we need everyone that gave last year to give again this year. And then we need 240 people that didn't give last year to also give on top of that. So every time we lose a donor, we're losing some of that percentage. Now, I know it's not all about percentage, but for us, as we want the world to know what a great institution we all come from, it's the way we get to show that. And so it's important to give every year to make sure we do not lose any ground. But certainly if you skip a couple of years for whatever reason, you can come back and start giving again.
Absolutely.
I think Mike would still take those dollars.
We all would. And as a matter of fact, Jessica, I'm really proud of a program we have called Trinity True. And Trinity True honors people who've made a gift for 2 consecutive years. And then we help you keep track of every year you've made a gift. And then there are different levels you can reach based upon the number of gifts. We have an alumna, a woman named Betty Childs. I cannot remember her class year, but she has given for 50 consecutive years. So we always joke about be like Betty, but we're really proud of her. Mike or Iska, anything you'd say about the consistency side of giving?
Sure. So I think we all go get a checkup every year. I think we all do many things on a yearly basis. So I think pick something that's meaningful to you. Pick your birthday, pick when you graduated, pick when you came to campus, and just figure out what that is for you and give your gift each time. I know that anyone in Mike's staff would be happy to receive an email from you. And if you say, hey, Mike, I can't remember if I did it or not. Can you help me remember, am I in this fiscal year or not? Whatever, that's what their staff does. That's what fundraisers do, right? And so they're happy to check your record, see if there's anything they can do to help you make sure that you're giving it at the right time. That's not bothersome, or we're actually happy to always get those emails and check in with people and be a resource. So I think it's just something that for me, it's a yearly commitment to show that I haven't forgot about you. I'm still out here. I still care. And this is still important work.
Awesome. Mike, any closing thing you'd like to say on that?
And no, I think one thing that's great that I take advantage of is recurring giving. So I put it on my credit card and just say, charge me every month, every 3 months, once a year, and then it just sort of happens. And it's a nice way of not having to actually remember every single year for those of us that need some help.
Hey, we are always happy to help. I think most of you may know this, but give.trinity.edu is the place where you can make a gift. It's just give.trinity.edu. That's our giving website. Or you could just go to the trinity.edu website and you'll see in the upper right-hand corner a give button. We have really tried to streamline that ability to give and make it as few steps as possible and make it so it's quick. We find, especially around those big giving days that happen in September, just people want to be able to make their gift quickly, and we've done everything we can to make it simple and easy. So as we close, I really wanted to say a tremendous thank you to Mike, Iska, and Jessica. I appreciated you taking your time. I love the expertise that Iska and Mike bring to this conversation, and I love the passion that Jessica has for this topic. I think you can listen to this conversation and just be reminded about how really smart Trinity graduates are. And I feel lucky to work here, and I'm really thankful to the three of you for being a part of it. I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. You know that this webinar is a part of a series that we have. We have a whole array of former webinars that we call the Learning TUgether content. There are webinars, podcasts, book club information on our alumni site. If you go to trinity.edu and then go to the alumni page, you'll see a lot of content. I oftentimes listen to these great podcasts when I'm exercising in the morning. So enjoy it. There it is. That's lots of great content there, from faculty members talking about their research to alumni who've done amazing things in their careers, to even conversations where a faculty member will interview one of their successful graduates. So please enjoy it. Take advantage of it. This concludes our series for this year. Our next webinar series will start up again. Probably we'll plan it over the summer. You'll start seeing it in the fall. So thank you again to everybody, and go Trinity Tigers.